Hi everyone. It's that time of week again, and I'm always excited to be having a conversation in the green room. And as always, hi Gulnaar, how's it going?
Hi, I am great. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I've got a little fun update for you to kick things off.
Okay.
This is episode 10, and we are almost at 1,000 views on the Guidebook
Oh my
Green Room.
gosh.
So,
That is what an incredible milestone. That's fantastic.
yeah,
Um,
we didn't really
I
have a goal in mind, but we're almost at a goal.
that's what my question was about to be. I was like, did we have a target?
No targets, no targets. You start these things on we see how they go, and yeah, we're almost at 1,000. And the first thousand's the hardest, and then soon it'll be a million. I'm sure of it.
Yeah. Do you know if LinkedIn sends like the little play button, like YouTube does?
Well, see,
Or is it like an L? Just a big L.
yeah, this is useful to know because I've only taken these stats from YouTube. I've not actually looked at our LinkedIn stats. We could be on a lot more views.
True, we could have eclipsed 1,000 already. Well, I do have to say, again, what a wonderful milestone to have reached. And congrats to you on the hard work. And while we're here, I have to give a shout out to Gemma, who helps edit these videos behind the scenes, and never gets any credit. So thank you so much, Gemma. And most importantly, I have to say thank you to our viewers. We're thrilled you spend part of your Friday with us. It's always a great time, and we're glad to have you here with us. Speaking of it being Friday, I wanted to catch up with you, Nathan, about your past, week or two. Didn't you go to another event on behalf of Guidebook?
I did, but I'm going to jump on the thank you bandwagon quickly and say a shout out to you because you turn up every week as well, and you're as equal part of this. So yeah, kudos to you and to our guests that have joined us so far, and
Yeah.
hopefully many more to come. But I was at an event, the final event of the year, which is always nice, down in Birmingham for anyone that knows Birmingham in the UK, not Birmingham, Alabama. But yeah, it was an EDU event down there, and we were presenting, and a colleague of ours, Jack, was running a presentation, and I thought to myself, watching him, we should get him on here and just
Yeah.
fire a load of questions at him because he handles Q&A very well.
That would be a lot of fun. We should definitely get Jack in here, into the green room. I think you're right. I think he'd be a fantastic special guest and knows a lot about what's going on in the event space and just a cool guy to hang out with. So yeah, no brainer. Um, I love hearing that you and some of the sales folks were at another event, exploring more cities, exploring more of our kind of like our client base, right? So campus life sounds more of our higher ed, EDU space, as opposed to other events that might focus more on like traditional conferences, associations, that sort of thing. Um, so I hope it was really rewarding and productive for y'all. Um, of course, representing Guidebook, but also taking in the sights and sounds. Um, Whenever I go to an event, it's really hard to like just be an attendee. I'm always curious about everything that goes into organizing and planning and executing effective event experiences. And I think part of that is because obviously we work in the industry, but also I feel like I've always been that way of just like, how are things constructed, right? Like you go to the movies and you're thinking about the choices that a writer made or a director made. So I wanted to pick your brain a little bit along that vein. And I know something we can talk about forever, but just pick like maybe a handful of the most important things. What are event planners thinking about, especially this time of year as 2024 winds down?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And yeah, something we could talk about forever, really, because it kind of took me back to, well, I mean, it was only, not long over a year ago, I was still in a events company and
Mhm.
they were a startup. And yeah, really thinking about the kind of conversations we were having and the conversations I would have been having in a lot of the other organizations I've worked with at this time of year. And it is quite a nice time of year for event planners, first and foremost, because the year's pretty much over by now. There may be a handful of events happening this week and next, but you're winding down to Christmas and you feel like you have a moment to breathe before ultimately you get to January and it's chaotic again. And I
Mhm.
think that a lot of people will be thinking about their Q1 events naturally, but kind of zooming out a little bit more, the kind of three things that jump out for me. One is technology. It's a really good time to assess your tech stack, as it were, and just really look at like how's that performed for you this year. And is technology helping where it should? Are you actually getting what you want from the different technologies you may be using? And I'm not just talking about mobile apps like us. This is your registration software. It could be engagement soft platforms that you're using, even like the way you're using like an app like Slido, which we, integrate really well with. And just looking at like how much you're spending, what are those kind of investment layouts. The one thing I find, and we speak to a lot of customers as well, is that people really do look at their tech stack more than I probably think they do sometimes, and they're really kind of considering those contract lengths and assessing, new technologies a year in advance of contracts maybe ending. So I think, yeah, keeping on top of what you're using, and are you using it effectively, or is it the right solution for you still? And also what's coming out, right? Are there new technologies? I mean, we're seeing, as we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, the IBTM, right? There's a lot of startup technology in this space. There's a lot of AI. So some of that's going to be great, and some of that's quite opportunistic. Let's say. So just kind of having a moment to say like, what technology could I be implementing, and what's coming down the pipe. The second, and I speak about this all the time because I think it's super important, is data and metrics. And that's across the board, right? We're just talking about technology. Well, technology gives you a load of data for you to use. And I think it's really difficult for event planners to spend a lot of time throughout the year deep diving into their data. And we hear it all the time. It's just you're on to the next event. You might have a 1 hour wash up meeting and kind of give some highlight information and stuff, but then you're kind of on to the next event, and you won't necessarily look at that stuff until you get to planning that event again next year. So I think like this is a really good time to dig a little bit deeper, do some trend analysis, you know, export all your app data. Right? If you've run multiple conferences, multiple events, whether that's on campus or trade show, whatever that may be, like get all that data into one place, start running some analysis on it, start trying to spot trends, start trying to look at like your user engagement, your adoption rates, content, like all of that stuff's really important. Same with registration. Registration patterns have shifted significantly since COVID, and we're still very much learning what that means for the industry. So, like traditionally, you would launch your event maybe 16 weeks out, and you would have your early bird, your super early bird, and you would have these patterns of behavior when you kind of know when your revenue is going to spike. You can start planning, even like food and beverage. You start planning that based on reg performance at maybe 10 weeks out, 5 weeks out. Now, people are booking later, or more people are booking later. So, we're still having to kind of understand all of that. So getting ahead of your reg data and just trying to find patterns that you can plan, budget, and kind of organize yourselves a little bit better, I think is really important. And then the final one I'm going to say is just like growth plans. I think no matter what type of event you're organizing, you're always thinking about growth, or someone is making you think about growth, depending on what type of organization you're in. And a lot of that can not just be revenue growth, it's engagement growth, right? So how did engagement go this year? How can we stimulate more networking, more connection, deeper connection, maybe more community building? How can we grow our audience? And that may not always be revenue based. That might be that we want to get 10 or 20 different organizations into our event because we think they're going to provide great thought leadership or whatever that is. Like, I think there's a lot of ways to think about growth, and it just doesn't have to be revenue. But now's the time using kind of the first things we talked about, but like data and all of this to kind of help guide you and really kickstart your kind of 2025 planning.
That's incredible. I appreciate the insights there. I think these could be three totally distinct topics that event planners are assessing kind of in isolation, but I think there's also a way to kind of weave them together, right? So first you said event planners are thinking about the nuts and bolts, the solution providers that you contract to deliver effective event experience. Then there's diving into the analytics, right? So gathering that evidence and defining effective for yourself, like what that might mean for you. And then driving growth, right? Again, like you said, that might be depending on what your goals are, that your strategy might look a little bit different. But again, to like weave those things together, you're putting solutions to work. You're trying to see what stories the analytics tell you so you can adjust your strategies to realize growth, whatever that might look like for you. So, based on kind of the experiences and learnings of 2024, what are some of those strategic adjustments or changes that you anticipate um, event planners, kind of broadly speaking, might be putting into practice in 2025?
Yeah, so one of the things I mentioned at the top was AI, and
Hmm.
there is the how AI is going to really help our life and the opportunistic, but I do think efficiency is one of the biggest wins an event planner can have. There are so many ways to get rid of kind of menial tasks for event planners and hopefully give them more time in the year to do some of the stuff I was just mentioning around, taking a step back and looking at the macro. But yeah, so I think like efficiency and freeing up time, they're kind of two good things about AI. But AI aside, I think also just like new technology into the marketplace. I know in 2025 we're launching some of our own technology, which is exciting, which will be, you know, bold new horizons for us as an organization to just step outside of being an app only. But I think no matter what technology you're using in an organization and software, it's time to kind of assess that. It could be your email marketing, right? Something as simple as that. Are you getting, the right analytics and, even if it's just a case of templates and planning and email structure, are you using software that's really helping with some of those reg problems I sort of mentioned earlier? And there's a lot of out of date tech, I think, in the event world that's kind of ready to be disrupted. And a lot more money is coming in. We've seen in the last kind of in the second half of this year, we've seen a lot of acquisitions and we see a lot of exciting things happening. And yeah, so I think keep kind of watching out for that space.
I love what you said about finding time, right? So of course, we're thinking at the end of 2024, we're looking back at the year as a whole, and like now we have the time to assess and evaluate and strategize. But like, what if you could carve out more time for yourself every day, every week, every month, and like have that time for things that you want to get done so it doesn't keep getting pushed off to like, oh, when I have time, I'll do blah, blah, blah. So yeah, really excited to see kind of what next year holds. Something else you mentioned kind of resonated with me, which was speaking of like acquisitions or just the way the industry space is shifting or rippling with this push and pull between acquisitions and integrations, right? Sometimes it is really beneficial to partner with just one company that can do everything, right? And other times it'd be more beneficial to partner with multiple vendors. Sure, it might be simpler to manage one contract, but you might lose a little bit of control as an event planner by contracting with a behemoth, right? Like you might be paying for bells and whistles that you don't want or need. You might be sacrificing some control over like customizing that event experience exactly the way you want to. Um, and of course, on the flip side, contracting with multiple vendors means that much more work and energy and effort to finagle these things. Hopefully, they can integrate and talk to each other. But you can be more creative and artistic with like more tools in your tool belt. So I don't really have a right answer there, but that's just on my mind, right? It's kind of this the monopolistic versus competitive market debate that
Mm.
happens in every industry. But we see it happening in the event space as well. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what next year holds, and who's the next big disruptor and in what aspect of event management.
Yeah, I think that's a great topic of debate and maybe one that we have in a whole episode one day because I think
Yeah.
the event industry is going through a pretty exciting time and it's a really it's a good moment to be a part of it and companies that have been around a while are benefiting from that, but I do think just to that point you were making, I think that having more suppliers but increased flexibility and the ability to kind of have more control. I think is important. And I think, I'm speaking to a lot of people who feel the same. If you work with one provider, that might work for a short term, but eventually you're going to come up against struggles, or you're going to be paying for things you do not want to use, or if they're investing all of their development money into just one component of their full suite, that might not be great for you either. So I think having that element of control, even if it's a bit of a headache sometimes, is definitely beneficial. But with that, we should wrap up, because yeah, I could go on for a long time, and people will stop listening. But before we close out, any final thoughts? Maybe a good film recommendation for the weekend or anything like that?
Oh my gosh. If you don't know already, my favorite movie is Gladiator. It's the best movie of all time. I will argue this. If you haven't seen Gladiator 2, it's great. Have you seen it yet, Gladiator
I've
2?
seen it. I've seen it.
Okay,
Definitely one
okay.
for the cinema as well. Definitely one for the cinema.
Yes. We went to an IMAX theater, so that was even more like just immersive. I am looking forward to the Lord of the Rings. It's an animated movie. What is it? The War of the Rohirrim that's coming
Oh,
out a little bit later this month. I don't know if you're a Lord of the Rings nerd, but like it feels like a must watch for
well, one of
us.
my questions that I made in trivia was about Lord of the Rings. So,
Yes, and we doubted ourselves, but my team won, so all's well that ends well.
wow. Well, we'll leave it at that. But good to see you as always. And yeah, we'll see everyone else next week.
Yeah, great to see you. Happy Friday.